Guys! So today we're going to be doing weaving with straws. So this is one I made earlier. This is a bracelet, although there's quite a few things that you could make with this same technique. You could make like a bookmark, although it might be a little bit thick for a bookmark. You could also do like a headband or a belt. It's all up to your imagination. So let's get started. I have my supplies out here. You don't necessarily need a ruler, but it will make some measuring parts a little bit easier. You need some scissors, some straws, and thicker straws are a little bit easier for this project because it's easier to get the yarn through them. But as you can see, mine are just thin drinking straws. So you just have to make sure that they're big enough that you can put your yarn through. They're also, if they're thicker straws, you can use a needle to help you get the yarn through later as well. My straws are too small for that, so I don't have a needle out. But if you have the thick, like milkshake straws or something like that, you could totally do that. You also need some tape. Doesn't need to be super strong tape because it's just going to hold our straws together as we get started. And then of course, some yarn. I have two colors that I'm going to be using. I have this one as well off to the side. But you can choose to use only one color or lots of colors. I'll show you how to switch. You could also use like this one that I'm using. You can see that the color changes. So if I were to just use this one, then I wouldn't have to switch out the colors. It would just change on its own. On the one I made earlier, this is a similar type of yarn where it had lots of colors of yarn in one yarn. So this one I didn't have to actually change out the colors for each of those stripes. The yarn just did that automatically. All right, so now that we have our supplies, if you have, so these straws were originally bendy straws, like this. If you have a bendy straw or something that is has a different ridge, you just want to cut right below that ridge so it's all the same size. Otherwise your yarn gets caught on this part while we try to move them off later. So it's just something to take into account. So now we gotta measure how long our yarn is. If you're doing a bracelet, go ahead and, gotta get to the end of my yarn, measure around your wrist, so you can see here, and then add like 2 inches or so, maybe more like an inch, so that you can get it on and off your wrist easy. If you're doing just a bookmark, you can just measure how long you want your bookmark, or if you're doing something like a headband, make sure that it's long enough to go all the way around your head. Belt, same thing, around your waist. So you have your length that you're going to do. I'll just do another bracelet. And you're now going to measure out 5 to 6 extra inches from that length. So this is the length that I need for my bracelet. And I'm now going to take that spot. This is the spot I measured for my bracelet. And I'm going to measure out another 5 to 6. I'm just going to do 5.5. And that's the length that you're actually going to cut. So you'll go ahead and cut 1. And you're going to need to do this for the number of straws that you have. So I have 4 here. You could easily do this with only 3, or you could add in an extra one and do 5. Depending on how big around your straws are, that will also add to the size of your bracelet. I'm just going to stick with 4, so I'm going to cut 4 strings. And they all are going to be the same length. So I'm just going to use this string to measure the rest of them. So line up the ends and hold it together all the way down and cut at the bottom. Oop, come on. And now I have two that are the same length, more or less. They don't have to be exactly, but you want them to be close. So I'm going to just do that 2 more times. Boop. Okay, so now I have each of my strings for each of my straws. So the next step is to take one string each and put it into each of your straws. If you have a needle to help you with this, go ahead and put your yarn in the needle, and then you can just shake your yarn down through, or your needle down through your straw. My straws are too small for that, so I'm just going to push my yarn through, which takes a little longer, but works just as well. You want to push it through, all the way through, so that you can get the yarn out on the other side. So on mine, you can see my yarn is actually a little bit stuck. It's gotten about this far down, but it doesn't want to go through that last part. So what you can do is take something that is skinny enough to go down your tube and try and pull it out the rest of the way. This is also why if you can fit a needle down, the needle will help a lot, because the needle adds the weight that needed to pull the yarn down. I think I'm going to go ahead and we're going to try doing this the other side and see if that helps. So you can see I used my scissors to drag it that last little bit, and now I have my first straw strung. So you're now just going to do that with the rest of your straws and the rest of your strings. And I realized I didn't explain how I'm using my scissors to help pull it out. What I do is, you could totally do this with a pencil or something just skinny enough to go down your tube. My scissors are handy, so that's what I'm using. But what I'm doing is, I can tell how far down the yarn is, so I'm poking it down that far, pinching the yarn against the edge of the straw, and then pulling it to help pull it out the rest of the way, since they are being a little stubborn today. Hey, we got one all the way through. All right, just one more to go. So one thing that I've noticed is if I push just normal, sometimes the yarn will want to just bunch up here. So if you twist the way that, oh, focus, come on. So if you twist the way that the yarn is spun, so like if I twist this way, you can see, maybe, come into focus. If I twist that way, the yarn comes undone, so I twist the other way and push it down the straw, and that helps the yarn come a little bit tighter as it gets pushed through, and it helps the yarn, I've figured out, it helps the yarn go through a little better as well, if it'll work with me. Oh, it's right there. There we go. Okay, so we now have all our straws filled with string. Next step is we're going to tie our first knot. So you're going to take your string straws, and it doesn't matter where the straws are right now, as long as they're just on the strings. And you're going to line up the ends of your strings like this, so they're all nice and even. We're just going to tie a knot with all of them. So hold them all in your hand, bring them all around your finger like an X. We've done this type of knot before. And then you're going to push all the ends through the loop where your finger is going to be. So if you take your finger out, you have your loop, and you're going to push all four, for me, of your ends through. So see how I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're just going to pull both sides and pull it tight. And I don't want a whole bunch of yarn on this side, so I'm just going to make them short. I don't want it to be too short, otherwise the knot can come undone. We now have our knot up at the top here, and we're now going to slide all of our straws, which I think mine are a little tangled now. We're going to slide all of our straws up through, so they're meeting at that top knot right there. Once you have this step, you're going to grab some tape, and you don't need a whole bunch of tape, but you need enough tape to go all the way around your straws once. So I'm just going to tear off a piece, and this is just to help. I'm actually going to cut this in half because it's a little thick for my liking. You don't have to cut yours in half if you don't want to. It doesn't matter either way, but just so I have a little more room on my straws, because my straws are kind of short. But you're just going to take this and go at the top of your straws where your knot is, stick it down on all of your straws, and then wrap it around. And this just helps keep your straws in place as you start the weaving. We'll be taking this off a little bit later once we finish our weaving or we get down to the end length of our straws. Okay. Now we get to start the weaving process, which is the best part, the most fun part. So I'm going to start with gray, and for this part you don't necessarily need to cut the yarn off of your skein or ball of yarn, because you won't necessarily know how much you want. But what you're going to do is take your first straw, spread it open a little bit, take your string and put it through so it wraps around that first straw. You can see my end here. And we're just going to tie a knot. So we have our circle here, our little X, and we're going to take this end and poke it through that circle so it goes right next to the straw. And we have a normal knot, and then pull tight. So now we have a little half square knot right here. We're going to go ahead and slide that up to the top of our straws. And now here comes the slightly complicated part, but not too complicated. You're just going to take your long yarn that's connected to your ball or your skein, and you're going to go, this part is up, so you're going to go under the next one. So for me it's my yellow straw. I'm going to bring my working yarn or my long yarn that's connected. So now it's gone, this one is over, and now it's gone under that yellow one. It's going to go over this next red one and under the last one. So you go over, under, over, under. So now we can see that this is underneath. And that's your first row. You finished your first row. Yay, good for you. Now we're going to do the same thing, but going this way. So because this is under, we're going to start with over on that first straw, on the last straw, the one that we just did. And since this is over, this one is going to be under. We're going to go over the yellow straw and under our first red straw. And you can see right here my stitches are kind of wonky. That's okay, you just gotta push them up and you can tighten the string as you go. Now you've done row 2. You're just gonna keep doing this over, under, all the way down. I'm gonna do this for a little bit and then I'll show you how you can switch colors. But I'll show you guys a few more times. So we're now on this one. Right now it's under, so we're gonna go over, under the yellow, bring it back up through those 2 between the second and the third one. We're now going over and under again. If you guys are using more or less straws, it's still the same pattern. You'll just do it on more or less. You'll just have more or less on this pattern right here. So we're now under that last one. We're going to go over the first one for our next row. Or, I guess the last one. Under the third one. Over the yellow. And under our first red straw. Again, they're all wonky. You just push them up. You want this part to be pretty close together because that's what will give a nice result when you're... one thing that I remembered that I was going to show you guys as I was doing this, you want to make sure, at least to make it look like this, that you only cross over one straw, because if you cross over 2 or even 3, then you'll get this gap right here. And after you've done a little bit of this, you could probably do some experimenting with designs and stuff with this. But as you're getting started, and for at least your first one, I would recommend just doing one by one. So you're going to go over 1, under 1, over 1, under 1. And just continue over, under. And you can see if I flip it over, there's just 1 here. Over, under. So I'll show you guys one last time and then let you guys do it on your own. So we're going to go over, under the second one, come in between the second and the third, to go over the third, in between the third and fourth, to go under the fourth. And back around again, over the fourth, in between 4 and 3 to go under 3, in between 3 and 2 to go over 2, which is yellow, and back under 1. You can see that my straws are being spread out as I do this. That's okay, just hold them tight as you adjust everything. That's the whole point of the tape, is so that they don't go super spread out. That just spread out just a little bit. So it's totally cool if they spread out or if they start twisting the tape a little bit. That's fine. That's the whole point of the tape. Alright, so I'm going to do this for a little bit and then I will come back and show you guys how to switch colors if you want to switch colors. See you in a bit. Okay, so we're back. So you can see I've done quite a few rows of this gray. You can also see that my straws are fairly spread out right now. That's because up here there's no room for the yarn, and then the yarn is pushing them spread out. But eventually they'll be just normal and it'll be all great and dandy. So if yours is doing this, no need to worry. It's all good. But I'm going to show you guys how to change yarn color. So I have my gray stripe here, and now I want to start doing my blue yarn. So what you're first going to do is cut the yarn that you were just working with and give it a little bit of room because you're going to tie a knot with it. And you're going to do the same type of knot that you did up at the beginning. So you're going to wrap it around. Oop, go through. All right, and I'm actually going to flip this over to finish it. And since we've wrapped it around, we have our X in between our straws, which is kind of hard to see. But you're now going to push this end through the circle that you made with your X and pull tight. So you'll have this end, but we'll take care of that at the very end when we weave in all of our ends. And now this part is finished. To start your next color, you're just going to do the same thing you did at the beginning. Right here, you're going to take your yarn, and I'm going to start on the same side that I finished at, and wrap it around that straw. And we made a loop with an X, and then you're just going to tighten it here with the knot. And you're going to continue with your over-under pattern. So this one is over, so this next one will be under, over the yellow, under the red, and push up. And you can see my stitches are pretty close. That's just because I've been constantly pushing them up and closer. And we're going to do it again. So we're going to go over a red, under our yellow, over our second red, under our last red, push them up, pull it tight, and we're going to continue doing this all the way down. And if you want to change colors back or to an even different color, like maybe you want to do a rainbow bracelet or bookmark or whatever, you just do that same process for each stripe that you do. Although, if you have self-striping yarn, like this yarn, then you don't need to do any of that. You can just go all the way down and the stripes will make themselves. But there's the next step. I'll go ahead and do a few more with you. Boop. All right. And we're going over, under, and push up, and over, under, and I'm going to go ahead and go all the way down until I'm about this far away from the end. My straws are a little bit shorter than my full bracelet will be, and so I'm going to have to shift my straws down, or if you're making something longer like a headband or a belt, you'll have to do this as well. So I will come back when I'm down here and I'll show you guys how to move your straws so you can make longer projects as well. Alright, so we're back. So you can see here I have maybe about 3/4, half an inch. I'm terrible at estimating measurements, but I have a length. But this is too short for the bracelet that I want to make. You can see I still have quite a bit of yarn down here. And if you're making something longer, like a belt, you'll have to do this step as well. If you have longer straws, you may not have to do this, but for quite a few people, I think it'll probably be a thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide our straws down and take part of our weaving off here off the straws. So you're just going to take the tape off the top and go ahead and lightly pinch the straw at the bottom, or heavily pinch. But you just don't want to pinch it so much that you're pinching the yarn in the middle. You just want to pinch it enough that you can slide the straw. And now, come on. Boop. So you can see here, now all of my weaving is at the very, very end of the straws. And I have more room down here, and the knot up here is a little bit, but I can pull it tight so it's close again. But I need even more room than this. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull some of my weaving off my straw. And this is what we're gonna do at the very end anyways, so it's okay to take it off the straw, because that's how we finish it. One thing you want to remember when you're sliding your straws, you can slide them almost all the way down, but you want to make sure that you still have string below, because that's part of how you can tell how much more you have to weave. And you also want to make sure that you have at least an inch. So if I were to pull this string down, or this straw down, sorry. If I were to pull this straw down so that I had almost its full length, I would stop pulling when it's about right here on my weaving, just to make sure that there's still enough to keep the straws in place as they are meant to be. Boop. So you can see here now, this part is loose or looser. And I'm just gonna pull, if it's getting too loose, you can pull on the bottom strings and that will tighten it up. And just keep pulling down until you have what you think will be enough room or extra room. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. So now I have up to here, this whole part is off and very floppy, and it's a little loose right here, but if I pull the strings, then they get tight again and nice and how they're supposed to be. So now I have all this room for my bracelet. So I'm just gonna keep going and doing what I'm doing. And you're just gonna keep doing this until you get to the length of your project. You should still have a decent amount of yarn down here left, because we added that 5 to 6 inches at the beginning, and that is just to help us tie our ending knot. So like we had a beginning knot, that extra length helps us tie the knot easier. You can also see here that looks like it's splitting, but again, if you pull it tight, then it'll fix itself up. Right now the straws are getting in the way, but it's all good. So we're gonna go ahead and continue the rest of the way down. Okay, so I'm now at the end of my bracelet. You can see it looks a little wonky here, but that's okay. It'll fix itself when we finish. But I'm at the end of my straws again, and I'm not going to move them anymore because this is the right length I need. We're going to go ahead and cut our working yarn, or the yarn that's connected to your ball. And we're going to do the same type of knot that we did when we were changing color. Or if you didn't change color at all, this will be the first time doing it. So you're going to wrap it around, lift up your loop, and go underneath. And that'll create a nice knot, and just pull it tight. So now we have all our strings that are ready, and we're going to pull our straws, but we're going to pull them all the way out now instead of just part of the way. So this might take a little bit of force, but you're just going to pinch and inch them out. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. Oh, come on. And because we're pulling the straws out, this is why you don't want the bendy part on the bendy straw, because the yarn gets caught when you're trying to pull them out. So you want smooth straws. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. At this point, you want to be kind of careful because your weaving could, in theory, still come off your ends. But I'm just going to bunch mine up a little bit again and make it look all nice. So this is, like you saw earlier, it was looking a little wonky where the straws were, but now everything looks all nice and even, and I'm just gonna pull them a teensy bit tighter. And now all we have to do to finish this off, for like a bookmark or a belt, something that's flat, is just tie a knot on this end. So it's the same type of knot that we did at the beginning. You're going to take your 4 strands, wrap all 4 around your finger so they make an X, and you're going to poke all 4 ends through the loop where your finger is. So we have here, and we're just going to poke that whole big stack. So I have 2 there, and 3 and 4. And when you make your knot, you can see here, if I were to pull tight, it would bring it up here. So you're just going to push it so this crossover piece is right next to your worked part. And then as you pull it tight, just keep adjusting it down so it's right next to your worked piece. So you can just slide it down as you're pulling it tight. And now you have a flat piece of woven work. Good job! So if you want to make it into a bracelet like this one was, although I had to undo it to check the length, which this one I made a little too short, but that's okay. What you're going to do is, or the way I've done it at least, I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this, is take 2 of your ends, and on this side you're going to push those ends. So I'm separating the woven part a little bit from the knot, so you can see here, I can squish them down further. So you see your 4 strings. I'm going to push 2 of these strings in between, in the middle right here. So in between the string number 2 and number 3. So now I'm just going to tie another knot like we've been doing, which might be a little bit harder. So you can see it's harder to wrap them around my finger because I've actually already cut these strings, which is why you want to have that nice long length for those ones at the end. Let's see if I can get this. Okay. Well, I'll fix the rest of it later. I might end up using a needle, but you get the point. I'm sure you could also just sew the ends together, like if you're making a headband. But, and on these ones, you can see we have all these loose ends. I forgot to mention, while you're weaving, you can kind of tuck these in between the straws as you weave so that they're woven inside, or if you've forgotten or you didn't want to do that while you were doing it, you can also just take a darning needle, which I have right here, if I can get it out. So a darning needle that has a bigger hole or eye, and you can just take your yarn end. I'm going to pull these a little bit tighter, and because these are short, I'm going to stick my needle in my work first and just work it through a little bit, and now I will string the yarn through like this and pull it all the way through. And this extra little bit I'm just going to cut off. So I'll do that with all my ends and cut off the extra. And I'll cut off the extra down here, and then I'll have a nice bookmark to use. You can see here, you can do it where you string the needle first and then poke it into the work if it's long enough. Like with this one, but that can just be if you have really short ones like these ones. You don't have enough room to turn the needle around. So then you can do it the other way that I showed. And you can see here my yarn's gotten stuck a little bit. Just rock your needle back and forth and it'll get it all the way free. You can totally cut these extra bits off as you go, so you know which ends you've actually woven in. I just prefer doing it all at once, but that's just my preference. And if you don't have a darning needle and you forgot to do this earlier, you can totally just cut the ends real short. But if you can figure out a way to at least weave them in partially, I would highly recommend it, because it just makes your piece sturdier and that much less likely to unravel. So I believe I have all my ends woven in now, and I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors and cut off all the little baby bits. While you do this, cut close but not so close that you're going to cut your woven work. So if you pull them a little extra tight, then when they loosen up, they go back inside. So I have this one, I pull it tight so it bunches up a little bit, cut it. Now you can't see the end. I'm just going to do that for all of these. If you're unsure if you wove in an end, go ahead and just weave it in again, just to make sure. No harm in doing a little extra end weaving. All gonna go ahead, since I'm gonna use this as a bookmark, I'm just gonna trim these, but kind of want this end to be the top end, so I'm gonna make them a little bit longer. And just, if it's looking a little wonky, you can just adjust your weaving a little bit, make it look all nice and pretty, and we're done. We finished our weaving. So this is the full craft. I would love to see all of your guys' creations if you do this one. Make sure that you post pictures on the chat because everyone loves to see it. And that's it. It was fun making this with all you guys. All right, see you later. Bye.